Let's make everything free, all of it. School is not the only freebie on offer by Democrats in the 2020 race, of course. There's Medicare for all, universal basic income, to name a few. But a new Heritage Foundation report crunches the numbers, and guess what? Progressive promises are not actually mathematically possible, even if the federal government confiscated every dollar earned by taxpayers who make more than $200,000 a year. One of the experts behind the report joins us in a Fox Business exclusive. Joel Griffith is a research fellow at the Heritage Foundation. I'm so happy to see you do this because it's actually not that big of a challenge to do the math. I've done it in the past and said, you know what, if we took away everybody's income, we still couldn't pay for this stuff. You guys went and did it in great detail. So you looked at if you took away every single dollar that people made, that made more than 200,000 made, right?
Yes.
And it didn't pay for all this stuff?
It doesn't. Surprise, right? Well, my colleague David Burton really broke these numbers down. If you tally all the promises made, not just the Green New Deal, which adds between 8 and 12 trillion over 10 years. You've got Medicare for all, another 32 trillion, universal basic income, which is between 7 and 45 trillion. If you add all of that up, we're talking about an 85 to possibly 160% increase in federal spending. That's 45 to 92 trillion dollars over 10 years. And we looked at, well, what would happen if we took every single dollar from those making $1 million plus a year from dollar one? That only raises $1 trillion a year. It doesn't even cover the deficit. If you go ahead and take every dollar for those making $200,000 a year and more, you get $2.7 trillion a year. But that's barely enough to cover maybe half of all the goodies that have been promised with those progressive spending plans. Only half. So the question becomes, where does that other half come from?
Yeah, and so you say, well, if I'm going to take away all of the money from, all of the money, tax them at 100% of people who make more than 200,000, why don't I also take away all money from corporations? Because that's the next bad guy that these guys go for. First of all, Bernie Sanders is always saying that corporations don't pay taxes, but it turns out if you actually look at the data from the Commerce Department, they paid $235 billion in taxes, corporations did, for 2018 on an annualized basis, right?
Right. And we looked at what would happen if we took every single dollar of remaining retained earnings. That's the amount, that's the income that does not go to investors in the form of dividends, because now we're already taxing that at up to 100%. And that's presuming that we are going to take every last dollar. That would only bring in another $500 billion a year. So we still have an enormous shortfall that has to be made up. And that's going to require taxes on the middle class at 3 to 10 times the current level. It's going to look a lot like Europe. And I don't think a lot of people are familiar that places like France have a 56% payroll tax. Same goes with Germany with a 40% payroll tax. That's what we're in for here.
So I just want to be clear, because they say we can pay for it by taxing the rich, that in fact there isn't enough money if you went to the extreme and you just took from people and from companies all of their earnings, which isn't even possible, obviously, because all these companies would go out of business and they would cease to exist. But even if you did that, you would still have to go after the middle class. So it's inevitable that while wealthy people would for sure pay a whole bunch more with all of these programs, middle class people who are already at the brink would also get taxed very significantly. Is there any way around that?
There is no way around that other than borrowing massive amounts of money, which of course would lead to economic calamity. Now, right now, about 38% of all of our GDP for all levels of funds, all levels of government, that is far below what we see across a lot of Europe, where they're at 55%. But across Europe, it's the middle class that is bearing that burden. And we need to see those that are making these proposals for all of these wonderful sounding programs. I mean, who doesn't want free income every month? Well, people need to know that they are going to be the ones paying for it. It's not going to be their wealthy neighbors.
No, but they never do the math when they do these proposals. Who needs math? Joel, thank you. Thank you for crunching the numbers, as depressing as they are. We appreciate it.
Thank you.